Why does one of the hottest regions on Earth, with endless deserts, extreme heat, and vast distances, continue to favor the largest engines possible? In a world moving toward downsizing, turbocharging, and electrification, the Middle East still chooses V8 power. Not as a luxury, not as excess, but as a response to geography, to climate, to culture, and to how vehicles are actually used far beyond cities, far beyond efficiency charts. This is not preference, it is inevitability. To understand why the Middle East still relies on V8 engines, we need to step away from trends and look at conditions. This region was not built for efficiency charts or urban commutes. It was shaped by heat, by distance, by open terrain, and by vehicles that must operate far from infrastructure. CarMap approaches this question from the ground up, from geography to climate to culture to the realities of ownership and use. Because in the Middle East, engine size is not an identity choice. It is a functional response to an environment that demands more, not less. The Middle East is defined by extremes: extreme heat, extreme distance, extreme exposure. Summer temperatures routinely exceed levels where mechanical stress becomes unavoidable. Engines run hotter, cooling systems work harder, failure margins shrink. In this environment, simplicity matters. Large displacement engines operate under lower relative stress. They produce power without relying on high boost or complex thermal management. A V8 does not need to be pushed. It delivers torque naturally and consistently, even under sustained heat. Distance reinforces this logic. Cities are far apart. Fuel stations can be sparse. Support infrastructure disappears quickly once you leave urban areas. Vehicles are expected to travel long stretches at speed, with full loads often in high temperatures, often without backup. This is where engine durability becomes critical. Desert terrain adds another layer. Loose sand, uneven surfaces, and heavy loads demand low-end torque, delivered instantly without hesitation. Small engines struggle here. Turbocharged engines overheat. Hybrid systems add complexity where reliability is essential. V8 engines excel because they were never designed to be efficient first. They were designed to endure. In the Middle East, the environment does not reward optimization. It rewards margin, and geography quietly explains why larger engines remain the safest choice long after trends have moved on. In the Middle East, the car is not just transportation, it is presence. Visibility matters because space is open and movement is public. Here, vehicles are seen long before they are heard, and heard long before they arrive. Sound carries weight. A V8 engine announces reliability, confidence, and readiness without explanation. This is not about performance numbers. It is about signaling capability in an environment where weakness is costly. Cultural driving patterns reinforce this. Convoys across desert highways, long night drives, family travel with heavy loads, off-road excursions far from cities. These are shared experiences passed down, normalized, and expected. In these settings, engine strength is not symbolic. It is functional identity. A vehicle must feel unstoppable because stopping is not an option. Silence is not valued here. In the same way, it is in dense cities. Audibility equals awareness. Mechanical presence equals reassurance. This is why refinement alone is insufficient. A smooth engine that lacks authority feels incomplete. V8 engines provide a sense of control that aligns with regional identity, where mastery of environment is culturally respected. This preference is reinforced socially. Vehicles are discussed, compared, and respected based on endurance, sound, and reliability under stress. Smaller engines, even when modern, often feel fragile in comparison. In the Middle East, identity is not separated from utility. The engine becomes a statement, not of excess, but of preparedness. And culture quietly ensures that engines capable of more continue to matter. Fuel changes everything. In much of the Middle East, fuel has never been a limiting factor. Prices are low, supply is stable, availability is assumed. This removes pressure to minimize consumption at all costs. When fuel is not punitive, engine size becomes a secondary concern. Instead, reliability, output, and durability move to the forefront. Economic structure reinforces this reality. Vehicle ownership is often long-term. Cars are kept for years, sometimes decades. They are repaired, not replaced quickly. In this context, mechanical simplicity matters. Large, naturally aspirated engines are easier to maintain, easier to service, and more forgiving under stress. Complex, downsized engines with high boost and dense electronics increase long-term risk. Policy plays a quiet role. Emissions regulations are less restrictive than in Europe or East Asia. There is no aggressive push toward downsizing or forced electrification. This allows markets to prioritize suitability over compliance. Tax structures also matter. Engine displacement is rarely penalized heavily. Ownership cost remains predictable. As a result, there is no systemic incentive to abandon V8 platforms. Fleet operators, government agencies, and private owners all operate within the same logic. When fuel is affordable, policy is permissive, and long-term ownership is common. Engines are chosen for endurance, not optimization. In this environment, V8 engines are not protected by nostalgia. They are sustained by economics. And as long as the cost structure remains unchanged, the logic behind large engines remains firmly intact. Markets adapt to reality. In the Middle East, the automotive industry did not create demand for V8 engines. It responded to it. Manufacturers learned early that reliability under heat and performance under load were non-negotiable. This shaped product strategy. Large displacement engines became the default option, not the premium upgrade. Dealerships are built around them. Service networks stock parts, tools, and expertise for V8 platforms first. Technicians are trained to maintain them. Supply chains are optimized to keep them running indefinitely. This creates momentum. When buyers walk into a showroom, the most trusted options are already familiar. Land Cruiser, Patrol, American trucks, all engineered with V8 engines as the backbone. Resale markets reinforce this structure. Vehicles with V8 power retain value longer. They are easier to sell, easier to export, easier to repair. Smaller engines, especially complex turbo systems, depreciate faster and carry more uncertainty. Industry investment follows stability. Manufacturers continue to update cooling systems, transmissions, and durability features around existing V8 platforms. Electrification and downsizing arrive slowly and cautiously, often limited to urban use cases. The market does not resist change. It filters it. Only technologies that survive heat, distance, and load are allowed to scale. This is how industry influence works here. Not by persuasion, but by reinforcement. Over time, the market becomes self-sustaining. V8 engines remain dominant, not because alternatives are absent, but because the system has already decided what works. Smaller engines struggle here not because they lack technology, but because they face the wrong conditions. High heat changes priorities. Turbocharged engines rely on pressure. Pressure creates heat. Heat reduces tolerance. In desert environments, thermal limits are reached quickly. Cooling systems work continuously, performance margins narrow. What works in moderate climates becomes fragile under sustained exposure. Complexity adds another layer. Smaller engines depend on sensors, boost systems, and tightly calibrated components. When something fails, diagnosis becomes difficult. Repair becomes slower, downtime becomes costly. This matters far from cities. In remote areas, there is no margin for uncertainty. A vehicle must keep moving without explanation. Hybrid systems face similar challenges. Battery performance drops in extreme heat. Thermal management becomes critical. Off-road conditions add stress that these systems were not designed to absorb. Electric powertrains remain limited by infrastructure. Charging networks thin out quickly beyond urban centers. Range anxiety becomes real when distances are long and support is minimal. Small engines also fail psychologically. They feel strained. They sound stressed. They signal limitation in environments that reward confidence. A vehicle that appears to struggle undermines trust, even if it performs adequately on paper. In the Middle East, failure is not defined by breakdown alone. It is defined by hesitation. V8 engines avoid this entirely. They operate below their limits. They tolerate abuse. They maintain consistency when conditions degrade. Smaller engines are not rejected because they are inefficient. They are rejected because they introduce risk, where reliability is non-negotiable. And in this environment, risk is the one cost that cannot be justified. When all factors are aligned, the choice becomes clear. In the Middle East, V8 engines persist not because people resist change, but because conditions remain unchanged. Geography demands endurance. Climate demands tolerance. Culture demands presence. Economics demands reliability. Each layer reinforces the next. Remove one, and the equation shifts. But as long as heat remains, extreme distance remains. Vast fuel remains affordable, and infrastructure remains uneven. The logic does not break. Smaller engines are not rejected by tradition. They are filtered by reality. Efficiency matters, but only after survival is guaranteed. This is why downsizing struggles to scale here. This is why electrification advances cautiously. not due to ignorance, but due to mismatch. In this environment, power is not excess. It is margin. And margin is what allows vehicles to operate without hesitation, far from cities, far from support, and far from failure. So the Middle East does not choose V8 engines out of nostalgia or spectacle. It relies on them because they remain the most dependable response to the environment they face. Until the conditions change, the outcome will not. This is not preference. It is inevitability.